Hey everybody, Dr. Rob here, Facebook Live. Thanks for checking in. Do me a favor. This is important. We're talking about gluten today. Punch, share. Let everybody hear about it. And I'll tell you why. Bottom line is, not everybody still knows this information. Not everybody believes that gluten is bad for you and gluten is poison. So punch, share. Share it with everybody. Do me a favor. Hit like. Terrific. Let's talk about gluten in the gut. I'll just start off by saying that celiac disease isn't being resolved. It's the same amount of people that have celiac disease in the world now as it was last week and last year. However, new studies show that 30% of Americans are on what they call a gluten-free diet. And I'm not so sure that everybody's truly on a gluten-free diet. And even if they are, believe it or not, once you've eaten gluten, it's not enough. So what is gluten? Gluten is from the word Latin. It means glue. It's sticky. It's a paste that sits in your intestines. And we're going to talk about how important your intestinal health is to your overall life and your overall world. It's called the silent germ. So you don't hear it, but believe me, you will feel it. Leads to an immune response. It leads to not only an immune response, it leads to an autoimmune response. Gluten can lead to certain things like rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, and all sorts of autoimmune disease. If you want to have what we call a healthy gut, big shout out to a good friend of mine, Dr. Vincent Pedre. He's got a great book to read about healthy gut. It results in damage in the small intestine. Gluten will damage your small intestine where the bulk of your absorption of nutrients and foods are. Big takeaway there. Most people, when they eat gluten, will experience some form of GI issues. Ultimately, if you damage your GI tract, if you damage all your immune cells, you ultimately will have damage to your nervous system, your central nervous system, which is your spinal cord and your brain. So as we go through this Facebook Live, I'm going to really talk about gut to brain and brain to gut. Average American, are you ready for this, consumes 133 pounds of gluten per year. Some people don't weigh that much. So when you start thinking about that, 133 pounds of gluten, and the average American also consumes 152 pounds of sugar. Think of what the average American is consuming daily. Basically, nutrients that are adverse to their health, that have no nutrient power, no nutrients that are going to help them. They're actually damaged or deleterious to their overall health. Gluten can be seen in wheat, rye, barley, and I want to circle oats. Oats are gluten-free as long as they were not cross-contaminated. Now, what do I mean by that? So when they're taking grains, if whatever the machine they use, I don't remember it, I'm a city guy, I'm not a country guy, so I forget what it's called. When they're gathering the grains, if they gather grains and then they don't clean it, or it's that same machine and then they go pick oats, there's cross-contamination. If they have a separate machine in the field to gather oats, oats are gluten-free. So as we switch to some of the bigger takeaways, so non-food possible gluten sources. I have people who come in and they say they're gluten-free and they're wearing lipstick. Lipstick has gluten. Moisturizers, we all use them. Hand moisturizers, face moisturizers, eye moisturizers, they have gluten. Paste, toothpaste. Think about that. How many times you brush your teeth a day? Medications use gluten because, again, gluten is a paste that holds it together. Vitamins, the vitamins I carry in my office are all gluten-free. You get it on the store, on the shelf, I'm not so sure that it's gluten-free. So that's a big takeaway. Gluten-free is what I carry. Envelopes, if you're licking that envelope, it's gluten. Stamps, if you're licking the stamp, it has gluten in it. Shampoo, unless it's an organic gluten-free shampoo, you're getting gluten when you wash your hair. Soap, hand soap, face soap, any kind of soap has gluten. And hand creams, once again, that piggybacks right back to moisturizers. How about gluten sources? This is not limited to. I just picked some of the more popular ones. Soy sauce. Now, I know a couple of my patients have non-gluten soy sauce because they like the choice of soy sauce. Soy sauce has gluten. Ketchup, cereal, lunch meats, those processed lunch meats at school have gluten. Candies, matzah. I know it hurts me. My Jewish brethren is screaming right now, but matzah has gluten. Miso soup, MSG, obviously. Alternative milks. Love to go to a Starbucks. Have no choice. Sometimes can't get my organic coffee when I'm on the road. Run into a Starbucks. I can get my pesticides. And guess what? I asked for almond milk and look what it has. Not only is it giving me acrylamide and pesticides, it's also giving me gluten. And finally, any kind of soup. It's a great base to make the soup nice and thick. Gluten-related disorders. Number one, you can get it autoimmune, allergic, or gluten sensitive. So if I were to put this across, clearly autoimmune is someone will get it because they had celiac disease. Then you have an allergic reaction, not the same as celiac disease. And finally, gluten sensitivity. Why did I put these all up? Here's your takeaway. All have bloating as a symptom. Symptomology. So I'm going to ask everybody out there, do you know anybody that has gas and bloating after they eat? Because if they do, they have a gut compromise. There are no pain fibers on the inner layer of your GI tract. So after that, I lecture a lot. I notice people about 45 minutes after you eat lunch, they start to lull off. Did that ever happen to you? If it does, you're getting a brain fog. And that means if your gut's on fire, your brain's on fire, and you're numbing that neurological and nerve impulse to your brain, and it's not the tryptophan like you're thinking. It's actually because you've eaten gluten or something bad, compromised your gut, gut to brain. Gut on fire means brain on fire. Don't forget that. If you have gas and bloating after you eat gluten, or if you have gas and bloating after a meal, you'll without question have a gut compromise, and you need to consider what we're going to talk about at the very end of this Facebook Live. So what about non-gluten sensitivity? Very interesting. Guess what? Bloating. So now I told you about the problem. You know, I was taught when I was a little kid, you can't just complain about the problem. You also have to complain about the problem and offer a solution. So we're at that point, we're at a solution. So why is gluten so bad for overall health? Number one, it damages your immune system. It damages your intestinal tract. Those cells, the immune cells, 70% of your immune cells are in your gut. 70% of your immune cells. So if I were to tell you about your gut, it has the surface area of a tennis court. That's pretty vast, with the thickness of maybe a thin piece of tissue. It's what we call one cell in science. It's very thin. It needs to be very pristine. And gluten laying on it causes an immediate reaction. Harvard University 2.5 weeks ago came out with a study that found out that 100% of Americans in the study had a form of inflammation, whether they were gluten sensitive, celiac, or not, after eating gluten. So the first thing I'm going to say is, before I get to my proverbial 6-hour program, is everybody should start considering to go gluten-free, Mediterranean gluten-free, paleo gluten-free, etc. So I like my acronym. Here's my solution. My 6R GI restoration program. So number one, you want to remove pathogens. The first thing is you remove pathogens like I just said. Don't eat gluten. We're going to go on a modified elimination diet. We're going to take inflammatory foods out. And what are inflammatory? Gluten, dairy, and some other specific nutrients that don't work. But gluten and dairy are going to be the two big ones. So the first thing to remove pathogens is change your diet. But that is not enough. Too many people say I stopped. It's the starting point. But what you want to do is you want to remove the bad bacteria, the bad bugs in your stomach. So some of the things that I carry here that help remove those bad bugs are called berberine, aromatic oils, and the like. Berberine is unique because berberine has a positive impact on pathways that enable 4 different organs to function more efficiently. So we use these berberines and aromatic oils to actually take out these bad bugs. That's how you remove anything that may be causing anything that damages your intestinal tract. Replace enzymes. So we use a lot of digestive enzymes, pancreatic enzymes. When you have gas and bloating, you're not digesting. 60 to 80% of Americans have a digestive problem right now, and more than 70% of those don't know it. You're looking at 50% of the population. So you want to replace with these dynamic, digestive, and pancreatic enzymes to coalesce, enable you to get more nutrient absorption. So I said earlier that the gut's number one role was immune function. Its number 2 role is nutrient absorption. So I had a question. They had called me just before, and they said they couldn't watch me. But they said, if someone has leaky gut, which is what we're talking about, are they going to gain weight? Yes, because if you don't replace enzymes, you can't absorb your nutrients, and you're always going to be hungry. So this may put you on a path, if you start doing this 6R, to losing weight and changing your body composition. Reinoculate with probiotics, good bacteria. Slam those all in there. So what are we talking about? Genus, species, and strain. Lactobacillus, genus. Acidophilus, species. NCFM, strain. What you want to make sure when you take a probiotics, like the ones that we carry here, there's a minimum of 10 billion colony-forming units. It has an expiration date. If it does not have an expiration date, that bacteria is already dead. RIP. In addition, you want to make it that it comes from a third-party certified company manufacturing plant. So far, it's check, check, and check, and you're getting the right strain that's proven to live through the stomach and the pancreatic acid. I only carry specific probiotics that fit that bill so they get to the desired tissue and get absorbed and do what they're supposed to do. Regenerate intestinal mucosal. Well, you got to think about it. If you burn down your house, you call the firemen to put it out. 1, 2, and 3, put out the fire. You're not eating the gluten, puts out the fire. You don't call the fireman the next day. You call the contractor. Because you got to build up that intestinal wall. So when you get a leaky gut, you have holes in your gut. Sometimes you even have what we call autoimmune at the gut, which is a major issue. The body systemically attacks itself. I use specific nutrients in a medical food, which is a meal replacement, which now tastes excellent. Great recipes that we do with it. We train everybody on the recipes here on what to eat. This will rejuvenate mucosal lining. We're going to use specific skirms. It's an herb called xanthohumol. We have the most bioavailable form of curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric. That bioavailable form of curcumin is about 4,500 times more available because of the extraction than other leading brands. Very, very interesting. Specific proteins, pea and rice, with branched chain amino acids, very low amount of sugar, and about what we call 25 micronutrients. So you're getting a sufficient amount of micronutrients to enable you to be healthy during the day. So that's the 4th R. Now, my R that I love to add is I retest. I want to see your gains. Too many people think they go through a program and it works. Most of the time it works. I will retest your gains. You may be better after the program than you ever were before. So the 5th R is to retest and to see what the gains were. And the 6th R is, once we get you healthy, I want to continue to retain your gut health. Without question, we want to retain your gut health. Good books, like I said. Mention my friend Dr. Pedre, who also gave me a testimonial, Healthy Gut, big name in the field. Dr. David Perlmutter, Brain Grain, and The Brain Maker, great books to read. Strongly recommend him. Brilliant man. Big shout out to David Perlmutter. Any questions? I think we have some questions there, John.
Yeah, let me just take a look at this.
Don't worry, I'm going to get John on his Facebook Live. I promise you, ladies.
Yeah, someone's just talking about, and you can look at this after, taking probiotics. What exactly do probiotics do for you?
Great question.
Do you recommend probiotics?
I recommend probiotics. I recommend what we carry here. By the way, let everybody know, I have a 1-month plan. I forgot to tell you. I have a 1-month plan. Call me at 914-287-6464. Obviously, if you're on Facebook, you got my Facebook info at drrobertsilverman.com. I have a 1-month plan that incorporates all 6 R's, a special 1-month plan for everybody with 25% off, where I couple all the particular supplements together with a diet, and we can send it out to you ASAP. You can get it in the next 2 days. So if you or any of your friends have a problem, it comes with specific nutrients and everything, which I'm not going to go into detail on the Facebook Live. It's better if you call me because I'll have some questions for you. You'll get to talk to me on the phone because I will call you back. I gave you my personal email. My office number, once again, 914-287-6464, info@drrobertsilverman.com. To get to the probiotic question, probiotics are bacteria. They're good bacteria, and you're ingesting them. So some people talk about, well, can I get enough from yogurt? No, it's in the millions. You need it in the billions. You need a true billionaire. And again, it's genus, species, and strain. The ones that we use are very specific. They're strains for specific issues. There's some specifically for the gut. There's some for nasal passageways. And believe it or not, there's even some for women's flora, vaginal women's flora. So there's a plethora of different types of bacteria, which is probiotic, good bacteria, to enable overall health. I recommend everybody taking a probiotic. I don't know if I would take anything before a probiotic.
That's it.
That's it. Guys, if you have any questions, big shout out to everybody. Thanks for seeing me. Don't forget, always yours in health, Dr. Rob.